On the table was a divorce application.
Let's get divorced. I'm going to live with my girlfriend. We're selling the house and the car, so you guys get out.
Maynard said, looking frustrated. I didn't know what to do and lost all expression. Maynard said just that and stood up.
Does your company tolerate affairs?
When Wiley urged, "May I have an answer?" the oldest interviewer among them cleared his throat and began to speak, as if coming back to his senses.
There have been no affairs here so far, but such infidelity should never be tolerated, and we will enforce strict punishment.
Wiley explained to the interviewer that his dad, who had cheated on Mom and left her, worked at this workplace and was currently having an affair there. My name is Eleanor. 46 years old. A single mother, working and living with my son Wiley. I divorced right after giving birth 20 years ago and became a single mother. I started dating Maynard, my husband at the time, in college when we were in the same club. When we started working, we both were busy, and I broke up with him once to date another man. However, I couldn't help comparing everyone to Maynard and didn't last long in other relationships. Then, Maynard contacted me, and we met again after a long time. Maynard seemed more relaxed at work and had grown into a more dependable man. Despite the long time apart, we enjoyed talking and got along as we used to. Maynard's stubborn and forceful traits, which used to be his bad habits, now seemed manly, and I fell for him again. We resumed our relationship and got married quickly. I got pregnant before half a year passed and gave birth to Wiley. Our relationship moved quickly from reunion to pregnancy, but what concerned me was Maynard's attitude. He started coming home late when I got pregnant and suffered from severe morning sickness. At first, he took care of me, but gradually he began to treat me roughly. Even when I couldn't stand the smell of oil, Maynard would insist on having fried food, and I often had to make fries while holding back nausea. When I was lying down, Maynard said pregnancy wasn't an illness and didn't allow any slacking in housework. Of course, Maynard never helped. He had become a chief at work. Maynard often boasted, "I'm the first in the office to become a chief at this age." I felt lonely but was grateful that we could live without financial worries thanks to his job. But the loneliness was unbearable, and I wished his work would end soon. I managed almost all the household alone and gave birth to Wiley. Incredibly, Maynard didn't attend the birth. At the hospital, I was mistaken for a single mother. After the birth, my mom came to help with the house, but she had to return home in about 2 weeks due to my dad's poor health. Maynard's attitude didn't change after the birth, and I continued to handle childcare and housework alone. One night, I went to bed as usual, but I suddenly woke up and saw Maynard standing by the bed. Maybe because he was drunk, his face was red, his eyes were sharp, and he glared at me. When he confirmed I was awake, Maynard left the room. I got up fearfully, feeling something wasn't right with Maynard. Wiley was sleeping soundly next to me. Maynard couldn't handle Wiley's night crying. He always complained when awakened by Wiley's cries. I got up slowly, trying not to provoke Maynard, and headed to the living room. There was a large bag Maynard used for business trips in the living room. I mistakenly thought I was being forced to prepare for a sudden business trip. Maynard said, "I'm leaving." I still misunderstood, thinking he was going on a business trip. "Where are you going on your trip?" Maynard glared at me intensely.
"No. I mean, we're getting a divorce."
I couldn't comprehend Maynard's words. What was he talking about? He mentioned divorce. Who's getting divorced? I couldn't respond to Maynard. Maynard, seeing that I didn't understand, sighed and said, "I'm leaving." He grabbed his bag and headed for the entrance. As if reacting to his words, Wiley's crying echoed from the bedroom. I felt sorry for Wiley, but I couldn't attend to him now. I grabbed Maynard's arm to stop him. I was afraid of being abandoned by Maynard. He looked at me with annoyance and shook off my arm violently.
"Don't get in my way."
I collapsed in the hallway. I couldn't muster the strength to stand up. Without looking back, Maynard said,
"His crying at night is so annoying.
and left the house. I called Maynard's mobile phone many times and sent texts, but there was no reply. A few days later, Maynard returned. I thought we might become a family again. I greeted Maynard with a smile, but he sat down in the living room chair with an irritated face. Holding Wiley, I sat opposite him. Just as I was about to speak, Maynard took a piece of paper from his bag. Seeing it, my heart almost stopped. Not that I hadn't imagined it. But being confronted with the reality, I started to tremble. Wiley, feeling the strength in my arms, became uncomfortable. On the table was a divorce application.
Let's get divorced. I'm going to live with my girlfriend. We're selling the house and the car, so you guys get out.
Maynard declared, looking frustrated. I lost my expression, not knowing what to do. After saying that, Maynard stood up. I didn't want Maynard to disappear like this. I thought I would never see Maynard again, so I stood in his way in the hallway. Maynard clicked his tongue and pushed me aside.
Don't go! If there's anything wrong, I'll change it.
I was desperate to hold on to Maynard. At that moment, I thought I would do anything if it meant he would stay. I was in a state of panic. Perhaps I was completely dominated by Maynard, both in heart and body. The thought of him leaving was terrifying.
Don't go!
I was nearly hysterical. Wiley, startled, began to cry loudly.
Shut up. I'd rather be with her than you guys. Anyway, we're getting divorced.
Shocked by Maynard's loud voice, I involuntarily stepped back.
Don't interfere.
Maynard pushed me away, just as before, while I was still holding Wiley. I fell in the hallway, shielding Wiley. Wiley cried even louder. Seeing Wiley crying, I was relieved he was alive. Maynard looked at us as we lay there, surprised, but then started walking. At the entrance, putting on his coat, Maynard said coldly,
Sign this soon and leave the house.
And left. Realizing I was abandoned by Maynard, I cried with Wiley. Maynard's words, "Get out of my house," echoed in my head. This house was a single-family home we bought when I found out I was pregnant. It was my dream to have a house with a garden, and Maynard made it come true. I cooked his favorite meals, did laundry, and cleaned every corner. I never thought I'd have to leave this house. I had fantasized about sending Wiley into society from here and maybe living together in the future, but it all became unachievable. I contacted Maynard's mobile phone many times, but there was no reply as usual, and since the house was in Maynard's name, I had no choice but to give up. Thus, I signed the divorce papers, left the house, and decided to live with my parents. At that time, my mind was full of being abandoned by Maynard. I couldn't think of anything else. I didn't even ask Maynard for child support or compensation through the divorce settlement. Life at my parents' house was hard. Dad was frail and sickly, and Mom worked as an insurance agent to make a living. To survive, I took various jobs. Grocery store, night security, delivery, traffic control. I did any high-paying job, day and night. We were desperate to survive. I think Wiley must have felt lonely with Mom being busy with work too. When Wiley was about to enter elementary school, he probably felt mentally unstable. He didn't want to go to school. It seemed that he was teased by his classmates for being raised by a single mother and for always wearing the same clothes. Wiley never mentioned it to me, but I heard it from his teacher. When I heard this story, I couldn't stop crying, feeling sorry for Wiley, who had done nothing wrong. The teacher introduced me to another student in the same situation. I started talking and sharing frustrations with that student's parent, and for the first time, I made a friend who was also a mother. Wiley also became friends with that student, and they started hanging out. Having even one friend made Wiley willing to go to school, and he became more cheerful at home. Wiley was a smart kid with good grades, and his elementary school teacher suggested he take exams for private middle schools, but we couldn't afford it. I often cried alone at night, wishing Maynard were here to support us. Dad passed away right as Wiley graduated from elementary school. Dad had spent a lot of time in the hospital towards the end, and although we couldn't meet often, he passed away peacefully. I contacted Maynard, but, as expected, there was no reply. Now it was just Mom, Wiley, and me. Wiley, who went to a public middle school, made more friends and enjoyed a fulfilling school life. He balanced basketball club activities and studies, ranking among the top students. When Wiley was in 9th grade, his teacher suggested a private high school affiliated with a university, but I couldn't afford the tuition. I tried to ask Maynard for child support and tuition fees, but couldn't get in touch. I even went to our old house, but a new one had been built there. Seeing the new house, I decided to give up on Maynard completely. I couldn't rely on Maynard anymore. I decided, albeit late, to become an independent adult. Fortunately, Wiley was not much trouble and was at school during the day. So, I started studying in my free time to get a qualification. I love learning and don't mind the hard work. Wiley also seemed to be trying not to burden me. He diligently attended school, participated actively in club activities and committees, and worked hard to improve his grades. Thanks to that, he was recommended for a scholarship to a prestigious public high school. Wiley's childhood best friend also got into the same high school, so we, two single-mother families, celebrated together. Around this time, Wiley asked me, "Are we not getting any money from Dad?" I didn't go into detail, but told him I couldn't contact Maynard and that he was living with another woman. Wiley listened, clenching his fists and tears in his eyes. After I finished speaking, only the sound of Wiley sniffling echoed in the living room. From that conversation, Wiley seemed even more motivated to study. He joined a club in high school, but he often spent his days off at home, and we, Mom, Wiley, and I, would have meals together. Wiley didn't say it, but he must have felt lonely. He cherished Mom and me and always found reasons to be with us. Wiley was doing well in school and seemed to enjoy his high school life. His teacher suggested college, but honestly, we couldn't afford it. I struggled with how to convey this to Wiley. Anyway, I worked day and night while studying for qualifications in my free time. In the fall of Wiley's senior year, he announced he wanted to go to a vocational school instead of college. I had been working hard, cutting back on expenses, but I had damaged my health from years of overwork. I probably couldn't work as hard as before. Mom was also getting old and couldn't work like she used to. Wiley's decision was a lifeline for us. He must have understood our family's financial situation. He said he wanted to study law at a vocational school and become a judicial scrivener. Wiley was smart enough to pass the difficult exams. He planned to pay for his tuition by working part-time. I gave Wiley all the money I had saved from working desperately. It wasn't much, but better than nothing. This might avoid Wiley having to work part-time every day. Just as he graduated from high school, Mom also passed away, joining Dad. Mom had always worried about me. I caused her so much trouble. She believed in me unconditionally and wished for my happiness. I was so sad I felt like losing the will to live, and I was on the verge of a life filled with nothing but tears. But I have Wiley. Wiley's life is still ahead of him. I can't break down here. Besides, Mom said she entrusted the rest to Wiley. Mom seemed to have told Wiley something at the end, but she never told me. It had been bothering me. Now it's just Wiley and me, but I want him to be happy no matter what. Wiley, having graduated from high school, got busy with vocational school, studies, and part-time work. After a while, I noticed a change in Wiley. He stopped speaking ill of Maynard. He used to frequently complain about Maynard not paying child support or compensation from the divorce. I thought maybe he was too busy with studies and work, but it seemed to be something else. When Wiley turned 20, I splurged on steaks for us to eat together. After we finished eating, Wiley brought out an old envelope from his room. Wondering what it was, I checked inside and found it was a detective's investigation report. It was about Maynard's infidelity. Shocked, I looked closely at Wiley's face. What does this mean? I was puzzled but remembered Mom's words about entrusting something to Wiley. This was given to me by Grandma. She said to look at it when I turned 20. So, it was true, Mom had hired a detective. I tried not to think about Maynard, but it was his fault we ended up living like this. I took the documents and decided to read them from the beginning. As I read on, I became increasingly unable to forgive Maynard. Memories of those times flooded back, and tears began to overflow. According to the report, Maynard had been cheating on me since we were together. The other woman was 6 years younger than me. It seemed they met through work. The woman had no relatives, and Maynard started dating her under the pretense of taking care of her. When I was pregnant and suffering from morning sickness, Maynard began to see her more often. He must have been fed up with me. It's strange that this woman, with no family herself, knowing the importance of a family, would do something to break another's. Didn't she feel it was wrong? Then, many photos came out. Photos of Maynard and the woman walking arm in arm. A photo of her with a big belly, with Maynard's hand on it. He used to loathe it when I was pregnant. What is all this? To an outsider, they would look like a happy couple excited about their baby. I had tried to ignore Maynard's infidelity, but seeing this much evidence, anger welled up inside me. Like a volcano on the brink of eruption. I wanted to send them both to hell, but restrained myself. Would it be right to show Wiley such an act of revenge? It might make Wiley sad. It's been almost 20 years since I divorced. The child in the photo must be about Wiley's age. I can't forgive Maynard and his mistress, but if I take revenge in this state of mind, their child would suffer just like Wiley. I need to think about what's best for Wiley and their child. A few days later, Wiley told me something unexpected. He had found Maynard's current address and visited him. Wiley, feeling the same as me, couldn't hold back and took action. He went to the apartment written in the investigation report. After all, it was about 20 years ago, so it was likely he didn't live there anymore. As expected, a different name was on the house number. Wiley was a mix of disappointed and relieved that Maynard wasn't there. Wiley rang the doorbell of the next apartment, but there was no answer. The opposite apartment also had no response, so he gave up and went outside. There, he saw an old woman sweeping in front of an aged house. Wiley asked her if she knew where Maynard had moved. She told him they had moved nearby. When Maynard and his family moved here, a middle-aged couple had come looking for Maynard, and they had a heated argument. I couldn't understand the whole conversation, but I heard words like daughter, child support, and compensation from the divorce lawsuit. When I heard this, I thought it must be my parents. Mom and Dad must have confronted Maynard in my place, demanding compensation and child support from the divorce. I had no idea about this. Thinking of Mom and Dad, I felt tears coming, but I managed to hold them back. I'm always crying, aren't I? Because of things like this, I always worried Mom and Dad. I need to be stronger. I pulled myself together and encouraged Wiley to continue his story. The old lady said that soon after that argument they moved, but she remembered well since it was nearby. Wiley immediately headed to that address. Upon seeing the house, he found Maynard's name next to the door. There were 3 names. It's like they're showing off how proud they are of living as a family of 3. Wiley took a good look at the house. It had a garden, a parking space, a net presumably for golf, and a basketball goal. Compared to other houses around, it seemed quite a luxurious single-family home. As Wiley was staring at the house from a nearby park, a boy about Wiley's age came out of the house. As the boy was about to ride his bike, a woman who looked like his mother appeared. It was unmistakable, she resembled the woman in the photo. A fine house, a happy-looking mother, a boy dressed in branded clothes. Seeing all this, Wiley felt an indescribable anger and clenched his fist tightly. I couldn't stand being shown all this. Mom was always working hard without any time for makeup or fancy clothes. This woman was all made up and dressed in stylish clothes. Wiley looked frustrated and looked down. It's okay. I have Wiley with me. Wiley nodded shyly. Wiley left, still holding on to his anger. It's natural for Wiley to feel angry. After all, Maynard had built a happy family with his mistress without paying us any compensation or child support. Then Wiley did something even more surprising. He went to a detective agency. He had asked for a reinvestigation of Maynard's conduct. I was worried about the money, but Wiley said Mom had prepared a little and he used that. The detective agreed on a discount because it was a reinvestigation. And with the results, Wiley confronted Maynard's house. Wiley's decisiveness was astonishing. He was so different from me, who had been sad all the time. Wiley waited until Maynard and the child left, then rang the doorbell of Maynard's house. From inside,
"Coming!"
came the voice, and the door opened. Wiley expected to be answered through the door but was surprised when it opened, and Rowena, the mistress, appeared. "Who is it?" Rowena asked with an unsuspecting smile. Wiley was defensive at her smile, but he remembered what he had to do and handed her the investigation report. Rowena received it with a questioning look.
"You've dragged me and my mom through hell. Do you know how much we've struggled? My mom hasn't even had time for makeup or a proper hairstyle. How could you do such a thing?"
Wiley confronted her, releasing his pent-up anger. Rowena was overwhelmed by Wiley's intensity but didn't seem to understand what he was talking about. Moved by Wiley's tearful and desperate appeal, Rowena invited him into the house. Wiley later told me about this moment.
"I must have looked pitiful with my teary eyes,"
he said with self-deprecation. Once inside, Wiley first told Rowena that he had conducted a detective investigation and found out about the house. He then detailed how Maynard cheated on me during my pregnancy, and how we've been living a difficult life without any compensation or child support from the divorce. Rowena listened silently until the end. I thought Wiley had settled things in his own way, but I was mistaken. This was just the beginning. A week after this incident, Wiley announced that he was going to an interview for an internship at a law firm. Wiley was about to graduate from his vocational school. He had narrowly missed passing the judicial scrivener exam and couldn't obtain the qualification. So, Wiley decided to work at a law-related job while aiming to obtain a qualification. He didn't tell me where he was interviewing. At that time, I had an uneasy feeling. The law firm for the internship was a major one with many applicants, but Wiley had passed the document screening and proceeded to the interview. Wiley said,
"I was always diligent in class and actively submitted assignments. It's all about the daily efforts."
With a smile. I realized later that all of this was part of Wiley's plan. Wiley came back from the interview. Since the day he passed the document screening, I had been feeling uneasy, so I immediately sat him down at the dining table to hear about it. "So, how did it go? Was the interview successful?" Wiley smiled confidently.
"Yeah. I was late, but it went well. A big success."
After finishing the coffee I served, Wiley started to tell me about the interview. I was so shocked by his story that I forgot to breathe. Wiley's interview was with 3 interviewers against just him. Wiley's application documents were well received, and despite being the last interview due to his tardiness, the interviewers had a good impression of him from the start. Wiley thought that as long as he didn't answer strangely, he would pass.
"The questions were like those in the manual, so I answered them smoothly."
Wiley felt he had done well. I mistakenly thought the interview had ended without any issues. The interview was going smoothly, the interviewers even showed smiles occasionally, and it was about to end. Then, at the customary "any questions" part, the atmosphere of the interview completely changed. That's when Wiley asked the interviewers an unbelievable question.
"Does your company tolerate affairs?"
The interviewers, hearing this question, were speechless and confused. When Wiley urged, "May I have an answer?" one of the interviewers cleared his throat and began to speak, as if coming back to his senses. It was the oldest interviewer of the 3.
"We have never had an affair here, but such infidelity should never be tolerated, and we will enforce strict punishment." When I heard this answer, I thanked them with a smile. Then another interviewer asked me, "Why do you ask such a question?" So, I explained.
Wiley told me this with a relieved expression. He explained to the interviewers that his dad, who had cheated on his mom and left her, worked at this workplace and was currently having an affair there. Yes, I had a hunch, but Wiley had attended the internship interview at Maynard's office. After Wiley finished explaining, another interviewer slammed the desk and stood up fiercely. This interviewer, who had turned pale since Wiley's last question, angrily started.
Are you joking? Making up lies. That's extremely rude.
Wiley remained unshaken by this outburst. Please don't yell just because it's the truth. Dad. At the word dad, the other interviewers reacted. Everyone turned to look at the interviewer who was yelling. Yes, this interviewer was Wiley's dad, my ex-husband, Maynard. Wiley had found out about Maynard's office through a detective's investigation, and thought he might encounter Maynard in the interview since Maynard was involved in personnel. Wiley had exposed Maynard's affair at this interview. According to Wiley, it didn't matter if the interviewer was Maynard or not. The goal was to inform about Maynard's affair.
I didn't want to call him Dad, but I thought it was more effective.
Wiley continued talking while calmly drinking his coffee. Wiley thought it would be good if Maynard's career was tarnished. But with Maynard's presence and his outburst at the interview, he was just tightening the noose around his own neck. Maynard didn't realize it was Wiley until the very end. In contrast to Maynard, who was shaking with anger, Wiley calmly attacked him.
You cheated on Mom and left her. And now, you're having an affair with a young woman in the office.
Maynard stood still, fists clenched, but was forced to sit down by the oldest interviewer. Wiley knew from the detective's additional investigation that Maynard was still having affairs in the office. I was dumbfounded to hear this story. He's having an affair with another woman now? What kind of person is he? I'm past anger, just astonished. And to top it off, the affair is with someone from his workplace. How selfish can one be? Wiley showed me a photo of Maynard walking happily with a young female colleague. He said he showed this photo to the other interviewers. With such a photo presented, there's no way Maynard could escape the blame. Yet Maynard continued to take an aggressive stance towards Wiley.
Is this some kind of harassment? Don't think you can get away with this.
When Wiley heard this, he thought, who's harassing who? Still, Maynard attacked.
Don't lie.
Wiley remained calm, with a composed face. It's the truth.
I wanted to ask how a company that assigns a person who commits adultery to a responsible position thinks about this matter.
I was afraid of my own son. It's terrifying to trap an interviewer at an interview. Wiley's calm demeanor made Maynard's furious behavior stand out even more as the bad guy. The two other interviewers seemed to be looking at Maynard with stern faces. When Wiley saw their faces, he said he had to try hard not to laugh. Wiley then stood up and showed the detective report to the other interviewers. They took it hesitantly.
I hope for a proper response.
Wiley said this and then left the interview room. From inside the room, he heard,
"What the hell is this? How dare you do this?"
cursing Maynard. Just when I thought the story was over, Wiley continued. He immediately went back to the interview room.
By the way, Rowena said she was coming here today.
Hearing this, Maynard was speechless, his jaw dropping. Wiley told Rowena about Maynard's current affair, and she was furious. Wiley said he had never seen someone so angry.
At that moment, Rowena was insisting she would make sure they paid heavily.
Now Maynard had no escape. Wiley ignored the frozen Maynard and left the room again. The room was still filled with shouting. Wiley had intentionally been late for the interview to make it the last one, anticipating this situation. Although it was a disastrous interview by normal standards, Wiley was in high spirits for having gotten back at Maynard. He came only to get revenge on Maynard, so failing the internship was expected. As Wiley confidently walked through the lobby to leave, he heard running footsteps from behind. Turning around, he saw a furious Maynard. In a rage, Maynard swung at Wiley. Wiley dodged instinctively but fell and ended up sitting on the floor. Maynard grabbed Wiley by the collar, yelling fiercely.
"What have you done? If it weren't for you."
He spat while confronting Wiley. Wiley braced for a punch. At that moment, Maynard was stopped by a boss-like figure from behind.
"Stop it. This is disgraceful,"
said the voice. Then Rowena entered through the front door. She coldly said to Maynard, being held back,
"What are you doing to Wiley? And what's this about an affair?"
Rowena finished speaking and slapped Maynard.
"You lied about being single."
Maynard was frozen, his cheek turning red.
"Don't joke."
Maynard came back to his senses and started making excuses.
"Oh, this is a misunderstanding."
The sudden intense argument drew the lobby crowd, watching the situation. Rowena, yelling angrily, began hitting Maynard with her bag. Wiley told me.
It was a tragic scene.
Apparently, Rowena didn't know Maynard was married. Despite being married to me, he had pretended to be single to win over Rowena. Maynard is truly despicable. Wiley said that when he told Rowena, she cried and apologized. Wiley told me that Rowena earnestly said,
"I didn't know, but I'm sorry. I'll definitely make amends. I'm truly sorry."
While crying, Wiley informed Rowena about Maynard's second affair with a young female colleague at work, which he learned from the detective's additional investigation. Wiley had planned this revenge when he learned about the second affair. Initially, he intended to confront Maynard with the report and force him to admit his guilt, but felt that wasn't enough. He deliberately failed the test to apply for the internship. Even if Maynard wasn't involved in personnel, he could still reveal the truth in the interview. If Wiley could do that, he could get Maynard to face social repercussions. Luckily, Maynard being involved in HR and being an interviewer made this revenge effective. After the argument, security was called, and Maynard was restrained and taken to the back. Rowena, on her way out, said she would demand compensation for the divorce lawsuit and sue Maynard's workplace for damages. Stunned, Wiley watched her leave when one of the interviewers approached him.
"We apologize for Maynard's behavior and will investigate and take appropriate action,"
they said. This interviewer was an executive and Maynard's direct superior. Hearing this story, I couldn't help but cry. I was touched by what Wiley had done for me. "Thank you." Wiley blushed a bit and sipped his coffee. As for Maynard, after this commotion, he was placed under administration and tasked with paperwork, but later he was dismissed.
"Could have been a co-partner if he had worked properly,"
Maynard's boss told me. The woman involved in the affair lost her place and was forced to resign after the upheaval. Rowena filed for divorce, demanding compensation and child support from Maynard. Moreover, she also demanded compensation and child support on my behalf. When I said,
"But it's been 20 years.
Wiley informed me that the claims from 20 years ago were still valid, because my parents had filed them against Maynard. I realized I had been supported by Mom, Dad, and Wiley. Thinking about it made me quite emotional. Maynard, now with a bad reputation in the industry, can no longer work in the same field and is doing day-to-day jobs. Unfamiliar with the work, he's become haggard, lost weight, and looks much older. This was also told by his former boss.
He has a lot of money to pay back to Eleanor and Rowena."
That's right, Maynard has a lot of debts to repay. When things settled down, I met Rowena. She sincerely apologized to me. I had no hard feelings towards her. We were both betrayed by Maynard. Rowena was a gentle and kind-hearted person. I couldn't help but smile thinking how scary she must be when angry. I felt we could become good friends. Thanks to my studies, I obtained several qualifications. Using them, I now work from home. Wiley passed his exams and seems to be thriving at a major firm. He says he has a woman he wants to introduce to me soon. I'm now pondering what to cook for her visit. To worry about such things. I'm amazed at how happy my life is now.